Hello, this is Ivana,
This is Yao,
and you're listening to the podcast Life in Black and White.
and all the shades in between.
We share all things life, relationships, marriage, parenting, race, and much more. If you enjoy listening to us, then please follow or subscribe to this podcast. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook under Life in Black and White. Hello, my friend, and welcome back to Life in Black and White and all the shades in between. I hope you had lovely 2 weeks and that you missed us just as much as we missed you. It sounds like a broken record, I know, but I really mean it. I promise. Hi, Yao.
Hey, how's it
I
going?
don't want
I'm
to
in
say
a good
hi,
mood.
Yao, like I'm introducing you, for Christ's sakes. You should say hi immediately without me having to
No,
tell.
no, I feel that I need
You need to
introductions
be
and stuff.
introduced, yeah?
Exactly,
Oh, for
absolutely.
Christ's sakes. Okay, so hi, Yao.
Thank you. Hi, how's it going? How is everyone?
You're in a good mood. It scares me.
Why?
I'm
We've
not
got,
used to it.
wow, that's
See,
lovely.
no, I
Thank
mean at
you.
8 p.m. That's what I mean.
No, you know, podcasts that we do, I get quite hyped up for them and stuff now because we've had some, and I know probably sound like a broken record, but we've had some really great guests and some of the
That's
conversations that
all.
we go through, it really kind of energizes.
Yeah, it's better when we have guests, no one instead of just us.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
I
know.
I I prefer it. It's like at least when there's guests, there's like someone there who's like
Energy,
quite
yeah,
and they've got an interesting story. Whereas whether it's just me and you, it's just like, oh, we've
boring,
already,
yeah.
yeah, we spoke during the day, haven't we? So,
Hey, on that note, so
okay.
Yao is introducing today's guests.
Hey, I'd love to introduce Simon is special. Last year, as part of my work and things, not a lot of people know exactly what I do. But
I think
I
no
deal,
one, no one knows what you do.
okay, let's just leave it at that then. But I deal with quite a lot of things to do with agile, with Scrum mastery, and this bits and bobs and things. And what I did this year was, or sorry, last year. It's 2025 now, isn't it? Um, I went on an eye-opening course. Um, it was it was around 6 months or so that it took, but it was such an in-depth course. It was one that it asked you to look at, your self-beliefs, your morals, your just so much about you, the things that you kind of run into, things around trauma, things around supporting executive members and stuff in how we deal with kind of transformation and things like this. If people haven't fallen asleep and stuff yet, it was eye-opening for myself. I did something similar just before, and this was like um, the expert certification and stuff within that field and things. And it was a lot, but it was brilliant. It was just one of those moments where you turn around and you think, I'm so happy that I did it. I'm so happy that I passed, which is great. All thanks to Simon and things, and him and Kim and others and stuff tirelessly just giving a lot of support to each other as we went through the trials and tribulations of these things, and it was just brilliant. It was just brilliant. So Mr. Powell, Mr. Simon Powell, kind of over to you, but again, probably
But
saying thank you as well.
you still haven't introduced Simon. You just talked about
Simon,
yourself.
oh, okay, but Simon was the coach who went through us going through the course, and he's done that for so many people and stuff in the past, and hopefully so many members and stuff in the future. There's so many people who's owed a lot of learning and positive learning thanks to Simon. No
Brilliant.
pressure,
No, no.
Simon, but it's all over to you.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you for inviting me here. And it's great seeing the dynamic between you unfold this amazing session. And really, I think if to introduce myself, I think, when you say it's an eye-opening course, really, that's fantastic to hear that. And there's also another element to it, which is it's a heart-opening course.
Yeah.
And this is what I see when I see you two here, this incredible dynamic going on. It's very heartwarming. And this
Well,
is really the topic of the day, which we talked about was courage, and what does that mean? And typically the heart has been this kind of metaphorical place where courage comes from. Do you have heart? Do you have this kind of feeling? And this is really why it's so important, because of this. We all have relationships in our lives, like this beautiful relationship I see before me, and
well,
you know relationships go they're obviously personal, and then when we talk about business and we talk about the world around us, we start to see that really everything that is meaningful, everything that is good in our lives at some point comes from relationship with someone, whether that be our children, our primary partner, or whether it's the people we spend every day with. And so this is what the reason why I wanted to come here as well, because of your great heart and such uh, there's such a strength of character there, and such authenticity, which really
Mm.
motivated me to spend this time with you. So if
Oh.
there's any introduction of me, really, it's someone who is motivated by relationship, motivated by heart, and who values authenticity and honesty, and doing things together.
When you
yeah,
mentioned
yours. Wait,
relationship,
wait a minute.
sorry, Al, can I say
Okay, so
something?
Yeah.
no, it's this is the authenticity. Yours
Yeah.
was better than mine, Simon. Absolutely. So that's okay. No, sorry. Go on,
Now,
baby.
when you say relationships, I think it's important to mention a relationship you have with yourself, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, very much so.
Mm.
And really everything starts there. It's very difficult to have a relationship with another when we're in a disturbed state, or in a state of fear or anxiety or grief or loss. It's very hard to have a very positive and giving relationship. And this is something of the reason why I wanted to talk about courage as well, because um, courage really is the tipping point between being someone who is a net taker from our systems, our world, to being someone who is able to give back, to contribute, to make a difference. And it's that fine balance point, and that's that thing, that balance there, that courage is so not understood by us. And in this world here, where we have so much change going on in the world, and if we were to believe all the news, it would be bad change. But actually, there's a lot of good change going on, a lot of positive things people are doing, but also in our own lives with well-being and being burnt out and exhausted by the society burdens that are put on us as individuals. That we all need to make changes in our lives. We all need to be able to be givers, as well
Yeah.
as being battered by the things that we constantly have, the constant demands that we have. And so there's this point there which is not understood, which I believe is this courage point, which says, actually, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to get out of bed today.
Mm.
I'm going to get out of bed tomorrow. And that takes a lot, and that's really that's the thing. That's that little point there. What's the difference between not getting out of bed and getting out of bed? That's
Mhm.
that's the courage point. And I think
Mhm.
yeah, the more we can talk about this and normalize these things that we all go through at some point in our lives, the better. So sorry to take this on a really
No, no. This is what
extreme.
this is all about. I think
Mm,
I've said this a few times and stuff in the past and things where we're really about putting out into the world positive kind of messages and
Yeah.
things, but not just like positive messages for the sake of it. You know, sometimes people have gone through something, and in order to kind of go through things, like in this case particular, you know, they've found the courage to kind of do this, or they've found something to kind of make that positive leap. Whether they've got to the end of the road and stuff, that's neither here nor there. It's
Yeah.
the positiveness of kind of saying, what, there's something within you that you
Mm,
can call upon and stuff sometimes. Sometimes you may need some help from people around you, but there's
mm,
something there that even at the darkest moments and stuff, you can do something. Maybe it's just that one step. Maybe it's just that one thing of just trying to get out of bed and things.
yeah.
That's something. And don't knock it for what it is. That's not a little something. When you're in the depths of it,
Mm.
getting out of bed is a big thing for someone who just finds it so, they don't want to and things.
Yeah, because it's this we talk about these kind of it's pretty much the low point when to get out of bed, but there's also other places as well. We're in a very healthy place and we see some kind of injustice in the world, something which is worth standing up for, something that makes a difference. And it's very easy for anybody to not say something because
Yeah.
it's very easy to just stay quiet, keep your head down below the imaginary wall or whatever,
Mm,
because that's easy. And but then we look around at us, and if we turn this into a positive thing as well, we look around us, and the world is full of inspiring people who have put their head above that wall, and they've gone out and said, that's not right, or I'm going to make a difference, I'm going to stand up for that, I'm going to do something. And we see this, I mean, in the I see the fire brigade go past this morning, a big truck full of people who have got out of bed this morning and they've put on those uniforms and they are going into the fire to save people's lives,
Mm.
and those people somewhere along the line decided that they were going to put their lives at risk to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
You see, yeah.
What would you say? What's the difference between motivation and courage? Or is there any difference?
Mm. So I think that so motivation is where we have the energy to do something. There's a decision point which is made, which is an allocation of energy to a given task. That's like a decision. So a motivation is that when we've got enough energy to allocate to doing something.
Right.
And with courage, there's another little element in there. And the element is that it's not just not just energy that's allocated to a task, it's that we are in fear of that task, but
Mhm.
we do it anyway.
Right.
mm,
Yeah.
And it's that ability to overcome our own questioning, our own fear, our own anxiety, or fear of loss. It's those things, or fear of looking stupid or getting it wrong, or being damaged, or even our lives being at risk. And it's the overcoming of that. That's what courage is to me.
Hmm.
It's the ability to say, actually, yeah, I'm really scared, but I'm going to
Yeah.
do it anyway.
Yeah.
and
In
I
your experience, who people who miss courage, I'm not sure that's the right way to put it because we all have courage in different areas of our lives, and somewhere we
Yeah.
lack it, somewhere we have more of it. But
Mm,
what stops people the most in your experience from having the courage to do the right thing?
yeah. Well, if we look at that definition of allocation of energy to something, then it's normally when the fear and anxiety is less than, or sorry, is more than the energy to do that thing. We're too scared, we're too in fear. And
Mm.
what's interesting is when I started researching courage and talking to people who have had extraordinary experiences, sometimes they've stood up for things, sometimes they've had things happen to them and had to get through something. And I thought originally that courage was that single point where you take the step forwards or you don't. But really, there is from the conversations I've been having is that there is no single point.
Mm.
It's a continuation of one's life. One has a narrative that you grow up with, typically from early childhood. It could be a cultural narrative, it could be a narrative from your parents, it could be something whatever it is, we all have a narrative, whatever that is. Every human being has some kind of narrative, and that narrative either lends itself to being supported or it doesn't. And
Mm.
we hopefully are able to, as we grow older, to adapt and create more positive narratives. But whatever that narrative is within you is part of the picture, not all of it, but part of the picture of where the courage is created. And it can be that for exactly the same scenario happens to two different people, but they create different narratives out of it. So it's a very internal thing. It's not really about your circumstance. It's about how one deals with that circumstance and
Right.
the narrative one creates around it. So that's
Mhm.
the first thing. So that's like a backdrop of support. And then we have the people around us. So these are the people that we gather. These may be friends, they may be professional support. It could be a therapist, it could be a counselor type person, it could be our community around us, family members, people at work. So this is our support network. The more support network, the more we can talk about things, the more likely we are to be able to make those continued decisions to get out of bed, to stand up for what's right on a continual basis. And this is a natural feedback loop. The more we do these things, the more we de-risk it so that we're lowering the barrier to being able to allocate that energy to doing that courageous thing.
Mm.
The last thing, there's probably many things, but one of the other thing is from talking to people who have made courageous things, often people come and they say, well, there was no choice. I had to do that thing. That person was injured in the road and I ran into the burning car and pulled them out. Or my child was ill and so I looked after them every night for years. I looked after this child. And when asked was like, wow, you must have had courage. And they say, no, how could I not have done that? There was no option.
Mm.
It's my child.
Mm. Mm.
So
Mm.
Mm.
when you dig into that, they did have an option, but their narrative didn't allow them to not have an option.
Mm.
And when we say, well, what would happen if you did this thing and catastrophe happened? What would happen if you stood up and it went wrong? And the last element is this faith that everything will work out okay. People who have continued level of courage, they have faith. It doesn't have to be faith in a God or faith in religion. It's a faith that everything will work out all right in the end. Even if this
Mm.
goes wrong, something else will
Mm.
come. And this
Mm.
is a positive, I think of this like a positive bank account. When we pay in, we nurture ourselves, we do regulating things, then we have more energy and resource to pick ourselves up. And the universe tends to look after us, or it seems like that. And we
Mm.
cultivate a sense of faith. And so these elements seem to combine to raise the probability of somebody getting out of bed, making that courageous step. So these are the elements that I'm gathering from this
Yeah.
research that I'm doing.
Wow.
Hmm.
Can I ask, what was it, Simon, that made you think, you know what? Um, bearing in mind, like you said, this is an area which people kind of find difficult and things. What was it that made you think, even though this probably will be a difficult area for people to kind of work with,
Hmm.
I want to do this anyway? Because obviously there's value in it. There's absolute value, and I can contest to that from last year and things. Absolutely, I there was so much. Sorry, I keep repeating myself, but I learned so much on so many different levels and things from the course and stuff last year. But from your perspective, why? What made you make that first step to kind of want to kind of create this course, create a situation where you helped other people on their journey?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And it was something back to what you said, Ivana, which was things start with the self, things start with your
Mm.
own self. And I had noticed over many years, especially going through difficult times, through grief and loss specifically, was that I would find myself with certain like addictive behaviors, like following the same pattern. And I would know that this wasn't particularly good for me, but I would somehow not be able to break free of mourning or being in grief or being down and depressed. And it was a challenging time because it was like I was fighting an internal war to overcome grief of loss. And I started thinking, what is it? Why can I not change? What is stopping me from being in a healthier position mentally, physically, etc.? And when I think about the work that I've been doing over the last 20 odd years, organization, or which is basically organizational change, how do we make organizations better? We have, having studied this, and you'll know this as well, is that we know better processes, better leadership styles, better ways of delivering work. Like it's scientifically shown that these methodologies that we've been working with are more superior than the way that most people are working now. So why is it that these people are resisting and that organizations cannot move forwards with the most basic and simplest iterative methods of delivery? And it was the same thing that I was finding with myself. Why can I not move forwards? And so what I realized was that there's this kind of immunity that we build up, this resistance to change. And when we look at what that is it goes back to these narratives, these points of trauma that happen in early childhood, these things that go on with us, and we create strategies, both personally and as an organization. And those strategies see us through those difficult times. But as our context changes, as complexity in the case of organizations gets more, or as I grow up and become an older version of myself that's hopefully a little bit wiser and a little bit more connected, the very strategies that got me here won't get me there. But those strategies were designed to stop me feeling emotional overwhelm. And if I don't do those strategies, I'm going to start feeling really overwhelmed. And I don't want to feel like that because that did not feel good. I don't want to go back to that dark place. And so I'll keep doing those things because they'll distract me. And that stops me from moving forwards. And so only when I go back and I look at that can I heal and move on. And so it's a healing process for me. And then when I looked at this on an organizational scale, you can see the the wounds literally in our society, the inequalities, the injustice, the hierarchies that put one person above another. These are wounds. And we do everything we can to avoid feeling that. And so we follow out these patterns of organizational dysfunction to avoid addressing the fact that all of us are equal and that we could all be valued in the same way. And so people hold on to their position of dysfunction so that we don't feel what it would actually take to heal us.
From your viewpoint, and obviously I appreciate,
Mm.
over such a long period of time, um, not naming any names or anything, but has there ever been a situation where you felt like you've paid you've paid it forward and there's been such a positive kind of response from it?
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I get to check.
Feeling
Yeah,
hot.
most clients are willing to go a certain distance, and every now and again you get an amazingly open leadership team who are able to look at themselves to really say, actually, do you know what? We recognize that the way that we're behaving isn't actually in our own interests. And that if we adapt this or we learn this, and they're willing to absorb, they're willing to do those things. And when we do that work, it's amazing that people, what they see in themselves, and then they can adapt accordingly, and the results are amazing. I mean, the people feel that they're a different person almost, because they've managed to face, and that's the amazing thing about emotions, is that when we actually live and breathe those emotions, they stop being scary.
Yeah.
Actually, they give us some information there, and that's the brilliant thing. And when people are supported enough and feel held enough within the systems, they're able to then face these things, and that gives them the support. And it's that, when we talked about what the elements are for courage, that element of support, the normalization of sharing one's feelings, enables people to face the emotional challenges which they have without suppressing emotion, which
Mhm.
then gives them the ability through normalization to take that courageous step because they're no longer scared of that emotional suppression which they've had.
Right. Do you have any, or can you share some specific examples,
Mm,
either from your life or someone you work with,
yeah.
how finding courage changed their lives?
Yeah, well, I'll start with one with myself. It's probably the easiest thing. And I mentioned about grief and loss,
Mhm.
and I lost someone very close to me a couple of years ago, and the power of the grief was almost like a lead blanket, and I was terrified of this feeling because it was overwhelming. And
Mm.
so I did everything I could not to feel this emotion. And yeah, I mean, I drank alcohol. I didn't go out. I didn't want this feeling, and I tried my best, everything to not feel this overwhelming feeling. And this went on for months and months, and it was really damaging in the sense that it was difficult to form other relationships. I would have extreme behaviors. For example, I would get cross with people and it really wasn't their fault because I just didn't want to feel.
Yeah,
And when I was able to actually, and this was through help of support with others, of saying to other people who had been through grieving situations, when I was actually able to say, okay, it was like a bit of Forrest Gump moment when he's on that boat and the captain's on the boat and he's like, is that all you've got? And the storm's blowing and he's like, come on, bring it
mm,
on. And Forrest
Yeah.
Gump and his captain are the only boats to survive. All of those boats that were hunkered up in the docks were all destroyed. But
Yeah.
those out there in the storm of the emotions who were able to ride it. And when I felt this grief, I said, okay, bring it on then. Let me feel grief, and it went away.
mm,
And what I learnt was that I was holding on to this person, to this grief. And really it was the message inside was something in me to really understand that they're not there anymore. And that the thing that I'm looking for in them, that I'm so wanting back, is already within me. Because that's what
mm,
I'm imagining that they're there. So I could
mm.
bring this thing back to myself, and that feeling of being able to explore and experience that emotion then unlocked the step for me to be courageous, which then meant that those behaviors which I was doing to avoid that grief could stop. But
Yeah,
just trying to stop those things without facing the emotion was impossible. No matter how many times, it gets
Mm.
late in the evening, I was like, oh, I'll just open another bottle of wine. And it's like, to stop that, it just stopped. It just evaporated. The
right.
moment I was able to say, okay, I'm going to face this grief.
Yeah,
And that is in an organizational, so that's that in an organizational setting. Um, there is I'm thinking of, I'm not going to mention names, but there was a
Yeah.
particular leadership team which I work with who were fantastic, and we did I and two others did it was like a constellation. We did a bit of uh, systems work with them, and what came out of that was that the pride of the CEO was that they communicated the vision, they're entrepreneurial, and they have this feeling of this emanation that they're the leader, they're the boss, they've got there because they're entrepreneurial and they communicate well and they've got the vision. And through the systems work, the biggest complaint that came out of the systems work is that nobody understood the vision. Nobody understood where we were going with this. They didn't understand what the opportunities were, which is entrepreneurialism. And this person had to face this feeling of, oh, well, who am I then? Because I'm this person, I've got this big role because I'm this person, but I'm being told that that isn't my person. That isn't the value that I'm adding. And so
mhm,
by then, this is the brilliant thing about being held in a systems coaching scenario, is that going through that process for them and then leaning into the emotion gave them the wisdom to say, oh, well, what do I need to do to communicate better then? Simple as that. What do I need to do to make sure that everybody does know the vision? Because I have a vision, but I thought I
Mhm.
was communicating well. So instead of fighting that, going, oh my God, I'm not the CEO everyone thought. Everyone should know the vision. Why are they not reading my memos? What's wrong with them? That could have been the response, which is
Yeah.
bad behavior. It's shielding that person from emotional overwhelm. But instead, by leaning into that emotion and saying, actually, I'm going to be okay with that. What is this telling me? That person was able to improve. And just within a few weeks, people were saying, oh, now I get it.
Yeah. The
Wow.
only way through, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can apply it to parenting as well, no? In any area of our lives. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
And parenting, this is a fantastic thing that you've brought up here
Mm.
because this is our opportunity, really. Especially with men or boys, is that there's this tendency for us to raise boys to be, I remember my boys, they fall over, scrape your knee, and it's like, come on, stop crying, get up. You won't go, be a man. You don't have to cry or show or share your feelings, and they grow up, we grow up with this idea that sharing and flowing with our emotions is not a manly thing.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the opposite of what we've been talking about. It's the opposite of being wise. It's the opposite of being courageous.
I'm glad you're not using the term um, comfort zone. It's so overused these days. No, but it's basically what it's about, that you have to get out of your. But I just can't stand this term. It's just so overused these days, and everyone repeats that without understanding what it actually means. But it is basically doing something that you're not comfortable with. That's when you grow. Otherwise,
Mm.
you where you are, you do the same thing. You don't grow.
And I think that there's two scenarios here where this
Mm.
actually we can use the word comfort zone or not, but this place of growth, and it really happens either because we choose it or because it's forced upon us.
Mm.
In both cases, there is this sense of this courage step to give out, and yeah. So whichever way, whether we're forced out our zone or into our growth zone, or whether we choose because we have enough resource, we're resourced enough to be able to say, actually, I feel resourced enough, I feel safe enough to be able to stand up for that thing or whatever it is that I'm going
Yeah.
to be courageous about.
So when you're saying whenever we feel any kind of discomfort or so-called negative emotion, we should face it and see what it's trying to tell us.
Yeah. Every
And then,
emotion, that's what it is. Emotion is a
yeah,
language. Emotion is just a body language to say,
yeah,
I've got something I want to tell you.
yeah.
And
Listen,
we go,
listen. Yeah,
no, no, I don't want to hear that. That feels
yeah,
uncomfortable. I'm not supposed to feel anything. And then it goes, okay, I'm going to shout a bit louder. And then
Mm,
then eventually it'll say, okay, you're not listening to me, so I'm going to make you ill.
yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to keep
Wow.
shouting. But somewhere in
Yeah,
there,
we can
wisdom.
apply this to our marriage. I think it can resolve lots of our arguments. No,
Yeah.
like right now, I can see you scratching your face, and I can already hear it when I'm gonna edit it. How much noise it's gonna make? So I'm trying to. Okay, I'm not gonna have a go at you. I'll try and see what is. Why am I so angry? No, but it's
Like,
amazing. I love that. It's 100% agree that
Mm.
yeah, it doesn't go away when we bottle it up. It just backfires. It comes up eventually. Comes out. I
yeah,
mean,
Something.
yeah,
and it comes out at the time, the time that you didn't want it to come up, and you could, like you said, you could flare up in a situation where you're like, what was
yeah,
that?
Yeah.
yeah,
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 Well,
yeah.
yeah.
it's funny that you mentioned this, like anger, for example, is a
Mm,
Hmm.
secondary emotion. So anger is never a primary emotion. It's always a secondary emotion. So if
Oh,
someone is being angry, what we can say is, what's the real thing you're trying to say? What
mm,
is it underneath that you really mean? And
okay.
typically it comes down to one of three things. It's either there's an unmet need, the person is not feeling safe, or they're not feeling heard. And this is especially
Yeah.
true in relationships, personal relationships. So the next time someone is being angry, either way,
Mhm.
then the question, rather than responding, could be, are you feeling heard? Are you, well, first of all, it's safety. I always start with safety. Do you feel safe to say what you need to say? Because if you're not, then it comes out as anger in some other way. So
Mhm.
are you safe to say what you really mean? Do you feel heard saying what you're saying? Or are you just
Oh
being
my
dismissive?
God. Yeah. I was just asking these questions in my mind, and I think I don't feel heard.
Mm,
Wow.
yeah.
I can definitely say that I can hear you at some cases, like
Mm,
on the decibel scale. But yeah,
yeah.
but you mean truly heard, and I understand. Yeah.
You
No,
do.
because there's a point in there because there's occasional times and stuff that, I'm a bit kind of shouty and stuff. I'm the bad cop with the kids and stuff in some cases. And I probably feel that in some cases it's the I don't feel that I'm being heard and stuff. I'm
Mm,
trying to explain something, and
Yeah.
sometimes I feel that it's a case of, but even in those instances, do they have the capability to really hear me anyway? Or, you know, do I need to find an alternative approach to try and,
And I always tell you,
communicate
yes,
these things?
it's a different approach, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it always is. It always
Yeah.
is.
if you when we look at relationships, I'm a relationship therapy. So my therapy is in couples relationships. So it's something which is quite interesting because it's never linear. It's when we say, "Do you hear me?" The person hears you, they even understand you. But the challenge is that those words create an emotional overwhelm response in the other person. And so that the response that comes back isn't to what you're saying, it's to a trauma that they have in themselves. And that response comes back, and often, like relationships that resolve into arguments that are long lived are typically because one person's trauma response, the way they respond,
Yeah,
creates a corresponding trauma response in the other
Mm.
person, and it goes round and round and round. It's unresolved because you're not actually talking about the underlying traumas, you're talking about a surface problem which cannot ever resolve the underlying trauma situation. So people can
Mm.
hear the words, you
mm.
understand the words, but you cannot respond in a way which is healthy, which allows them to truly be accepted.
Yeah.
It's not easy,
Mhm.
is it? It's not
No,
easy at
not
all.
easy at
So
all.
complex. Yeah. But
Mm.
also, when we talked about not feeling heard, another thing is that when I don't say it, example, I don't feel heard, is it because is who is fault is the fault is that the person's or I don't communicate my needs clearly,
Mm.
So
Could
that's
it be a
that's
bit?
the big question as well. Because it's easy
Could
to blame the other person, like you don't listen to me, you don't hear me, but it's
Yeah.
not, it's the victim mentality then. So I think it's always up to us to take responsibility and have the courage
Mm.
to be honest with ourselves and say, okay, maybe I don't communicate my needs clearly or properly because other people can't read. Especially, women want their men to read their minds, but and I think also now that takes a huge courage to actually admit that and take responsibility.
It's hard. It
Oh,
is hard. And a lot of
Mm.
it does come down to this cyclical nature. So, what you can do is map out a typical conversation. So, person A says this, person that elicits a response in person B, which person A then finds offense with that, which person B says. And normally it doesn't go on for more than 4 or 5 steps, including both people. So it's not like four each,
yeah.
it's like couple each. And
Yeah.
when you look at these statements and you look in what's underneath this pattern, and the pattern often in a relationship that is resulting in arguments, it can be different topics, but underlying it's the same pattern. And basically, what almost invariably it comes down to, do you love me?
Mm.
Really? Are you on my side? Are we in
Mm.
this together?
Mm.
And when someone says, "Oh, I don't know, I'm making this up now," it's like, "Oh, you didn't do the washing up yesterday. I've asked you 5 times before, and every time you leave the washing up in the sink. What's your problem? Oh, stop nagging me. Why are you always nagging? I've had a hard day at work. Why should I come home? You sat there all day. You go and do the washing up." What are they really saying? What's really
You
going
do.
on? It's like, do you value me? I've done
Mm.
this for us in our relationship. I do some work and I've come home and I've made this mess. And the other person is saying, well, do you value this cleanliness in this space? Because that's important to me. Do you value what's important to me? Do you
Mm,
care? Do you love me?
mhm, mhm.
And so all of these things come down really for all of us aching for connection
Yeah.
because
Mm,
the illusion, this is another great topic, which I don't think we have time for, but the illusion of separateness, the illusion of
mm,
individuality. And
mm,
this is another
yeah.
aspect of all of these things that in our relationships, we're really looking for the knowledge that we're not alone, that actually this illusion of separateness, you are part of the cosmic weave of this
Mm,
universe, whether that's part of God, whether it's part of love
mm,
or the divine or whatever you want to call it, this illusion that you're separate and you're on your own. We have our relationships as a mirror of that. And what we're
mm,
really asking for the other one is to know that we're not alone.
mm. We could talk about this for ages, can't we?
Yeah,
Sure.
But yeah, it's such a complex subject.
Mm.
But maybe just because courage, like you explained, it we can apply to any area of our lives. And what would you say or advise to people? How do they find the courage when they feel like they don't have it?
It's not a single point in time. It's an ongoing self-development journey, and it is an awakening. Courage is
Mm,
a part of a journey. It's an awakening when you reach a certain stage that you've nurtured yourself. Do meditation, go out for a walk, create friends, be with people, regulate your emotional system by doing helpful, nurturing things, whatever that means to you. Different people have different things. So it could
yeah,
be having a bath and pampering yourself in that way. It could be going out for a walk, meditation. It could be going to a party. Who knows? Whatever it is, what healthy things are you doing to build your strength? What connections have you got with others that you can build that strength in? What narrative are you telling yourself, and how can you change that narrative? And don't expect to do things overnight. Most people I've spoken to in this domain, and also my own experience, it's one step at a time. Keep
yeah,
moving forwards. Take the step that's in front of you. And you
yeah,
don't, if it's 20 steps to the finish line, it starts with a single step. And then if you want to rest, you can walk back, you can take the step back. It's
yeah,
okay. Befriend
yeah.
your nervous system. Look at there's so much work now done on things that we
Mm,
can do to regulate our nervous system. How do we
yeah, yeah.
reduce the anxiety?
It's like yeah, it's not the destination. There's no destination. It's a journey. It's not
Mm,
like you wake up one day. Oh, now I have courage. Yeah,
yeah.
it's an ongoing journey. Sorry, Yao, you were
Yeah,
going to say something.
no, I think you kind of covered it because I was going to ask, what would you say to 25
Oh,
year old Simon? But I think that was kind of covered in what you kind of brought up there and things. So no, brilliant.
sometimes the question is, what would the child self tell us? No, because
Yeah,
as children we were wiser than we are now. So I usually do it other way around. I connect with the inner child who was unstoppable, fearless, and I ask her, what would you tell?
it would be, if I had to say one thing about it, it was to be that courage is your natural state. It's a
Yeah.
natural birthright.
wow.
And it's our conditions that we may have grown in that makes us forget that you're naturally courageous. We are all naturally courageous. It is a part of us as human beings. Our natural self, our natural state is one of courage. Look at every child who gets up and tries to walk and falls over, and gets up and walks and falls over. How many adults are there who never got through that stage?
Mm,
Okay,
We
fair
all,
enough if there's a
yeah,
physical disability, but without that a real physical reason, people get through that and they walk,
yeah,
right? And this is a natural state for us, and we forget it. And so if you are trying to find the courage, remember that it is yours already. You just got to
Mm.
re-find it.
Oh, I love that.
Mm.
Can I just say one more thing before I know the time is kind of against us? There's one thing that really kind of helped me with some of the challenges and stuff that I went through like last year. And sorry if I'm kind of hogging the limelight right at the end,
Ah,
but
sure. Right.
one of the things that you kind of reminded me of, and I know, baby, you do the same thing, and so do the kids, but the fact that you matter and you're good enough.
Mm.
It's two statements that are so people forget that with
Mm.
so much kind of going on in our lives and stuff. The fact that each and every one of us matter, we all matter, and we all are enough for who we are
We
and
wouldn't
stuff.
be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just it's life changing and stuff sometimes when you
Mm.
realize that. So for that, thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And if you can just tell our listeners where they can find you, we also share the links in the description, of course.
Yeah, for sure. So deeperchange.academy is my URL. So that's
Mhm.
my new company, which we started up earlier in this year. There's one-to-one sessions you can book with me. There's training courses. There's organizational change programs on there for people. So yeah, deeperchange.academy, and you can find me on there. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Simon
Oh,
Power. Yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this with us. Wish we could talk more. And if you
Amazing.
enjoyed this episode, please share it with those who you think would enjoy it as well.
Of
And
course.
until next time, see you next time.